What has been your worst experience flying in a plane? 20,000 feet, the O2 masks come down. Long silence from the crew. Finally, the pilot comes on and says lots of electrical systems are out and we're landing at a small airport in 9 minutes. The descent was on full air brakes, which made the flight loud and shaking, with kids screaming because their ears were hurting, parents screaming at their kids to blow while holding their noses, adult behind us slapping his thighs shouting endlessly "oh no. Oh no." But we got an $8 voucher for lunch at the airport while we waited for a new plane. Edit. This was United Airlines about 15 years ago. There was no one else in the terminal when we landed, but to get our $8 lunch vouchers, we had to prove we were on the flight by showing our ticket. There was a one-line report in the FAD documents saying multiple electrical failure. It was not a lightning strike since the weather was clear where we were. There was no depressurization either. The pilot deployed the masks as a precaution when the electrical circuits failed. As we landed, a big T-storm hit the airport from the opposite direction, and that is why we had to land so quickly, hence the full air brakes and rapid, ear-torturing descent. My wife and I were actually quite calm during the event, holding hands. There seemed to be no real danger because the pilot was clearly in good control of the plane, but afterward we slept for most of 3 days straight. On a flight from Philadelphia to Denver, late December 1990, as we get about an hour from Denver, pilot tells us a blizzard has closed the Denver airport, and we need to divert. We divert to a place called Gunnison Company. Gunnison Airport is small, not really set up for large commercial airliners. As we approach, I look out the window and see mountain tops on either side. The captain comes on and tells us to prepare for an emergency landing, meaning stow your stuff, buckle your seat belt, and assume the crash position. As in put your head between your legs. Now I'm about 14 years old, traveling with my aunt, 2 cousins and their 2 friends. My cousin Billy and I are joking about this situation, while my aunt is praying with my other cousin. We land, and need basically every foot of the runway to come to a stop. The pilot then has to get off the plane and make a phone call because we are basically alone. Hours from Denver, they get some shuttle buses to show up after about an hour. Then we begin the 6-hour ride to Denver. That was a long-ass day. Colorado here, blizzards are the result of a very specific set of conditions, namely, snowfall combined with fast gusting winds and very low visibility. Because this is really a perfect storm of bullshit, blizzards usually only affect a very small area at a time. While it was possible that there was snowfall in Gunnison where I landed, it was almost certainly not blizzard conditions. While interstates and large highways often close during big snowstorms, this is mostly a damage control measure. Lots of stupid people will underestimate the conditions and cause crashes, and the DOT wants to avoid that. A skilled and experienced driver, however, can navigate rough snowy conditions using small highways and back roads to reach a destination even in shit weather, provided that the snowfall on the pavement doesn't prevent vehicles from physically moving forward. Because of the first point, and because snowplows work fast as hell in Colorado, it's likely that the storm was over and the major roads were cleared by the time I reached Denver. Plane safety is way more anal than car safety. Even accounting for the above, Ops shuttle to Denver was probably not much safer, or even less safe, than landing in that blizzard would have been. It's just that planes are far more regulated than cars, so the bar is much higher for what's acceptable in terms of safety. Hope all this helps. Yeah, no. The captain absolutely gets to choose how much fuel is loaded. There are legal minimum reserve fuel requirements, and airlines put a lot of pressure on their pilots to either load minimum fuel or even below the legal minimum. Yes, it does happen. However, the captain is in charge of the aircrafter and they absolutely have the authority to load as much fuel as they want. There very well could have been no other viable airports to land at, and depending on the distances, even with additional fuel returning to the airport they took off from could also be unfeasible. However, taking more fuel always gives you more options. Certainly, landing on a small runway is impressive, but why risk the lives of yourself and all your passengers to save your company a few dollars? About 6 years ago I was sitting on a plane and I suddenly felt a tickle in my throat. It just wouldn't go away. I'd cough and cough and cough. Nothing. The only thing that helped was ice chips. But even then I couldn't stop. It was miserable. That night I woke up in the middle of the night with 2 swollen eyes, swollen lips, hives all over my body, hot joints, and a tight chest. I was having some severe allergic reaction to something, which means that on the plane, my throat was closing and I just didn't know it. Of course, the ice chips helped because they were keeping the swelling down. What's weird is that has never happened before or since then, and I'm not allergic to anything that I know of. Something similar happened to me. I ate a burger from Hungry Jack's, Aussie Burger King, and I got a severe reaction. It started with severe itching, followed by hives, swollen face, and my throat was beginning to close up. I had to go to the hospital because it was the weekend and all the doctors were closed. The worst of it was my feet got so swollen that it really hurt to walk. It sucked. The strange thing is that I had Hungry Jack's lots of times before and lots of times afterwards, and I never had that reaction again. Thank you for doing this. Literally someone saved my husband's life by doing this exact same thing. It can be a lifesaver to carry Benadryl. Years ago we landed in Bali, arrived to the hotel late, around 10 p.m. A hotel that was on a very steep hill and very spread out with not a lot of people around, staff or guests. Since it was off-season, the welcome woman handed us a pink fruity drink. We downed it, then went to sit on our patio and relax after 24 hours of travel. We did not know at the time that my husband is deathly allergic to dragon fruit, so didn't carry any Benadryl or other medicine for it. And within 20 minutes his throat completely swelled shut and he started vomiting, with a closed-up throat so he kept choking, plus a full puffy swelled face and lips, so he could barely breathe. I tried calling front desk, no answer. I had to leave him solo and run around the huge property sprinting up and down stairs trying to find help in the dark. No one spoke enough English of course to understand what I was needing other than my frantic arm waving and help. The woman went to her room but said please don't tell her manager she doesn't want to get fired for making him sick from the drink. The closest emergency was at least 45 minutes away. I got the instinct to run back up towards the front gate, and by divine luck a young couple from Australia had just been dropped off and were checking in. They heard my frantic explanation to a staff member and told me they had Benadryl. They gave me the pack and I sprinted the longest 5 minutes of my life back to our cabin and got it to my husband, who luckily was able to swallow it between vomits. Within 20 minutes the swelling started to subside and he could actually breathe again. So yes, Benadryl. Way back when in like 2003-ish, that is 9/11 was still fresh on the mind for most. I was on a crutch youth group trip where we were flying into Canada. Just as we were about to land, this one kid thought it'd be funny to scream at the top of his lungs, "We're burning up" on re-entry. Everything wound up being fine, but he was detained, questioned by law enforcement for like an hour and nearly denied entry into the country. I don't know how serious it actually was given that this was like 14-year-old kid, but it definitely seemed to be. Maybe they were just trying to scare him straight or something. Frankly, this guy probably needed that lull. I used to feel like this. I was young and in a Star Wars phase and I just felt like I was in the Millennium Falcon. A fast bucket of bolts, just felt like being in a bumpy car as a kid. Fun. This all changed when I experienced something similar to the top comment. Our plane dropped a couple thousand feet. Due to turbulence, the stewards were still serving drinks. The lights went out, the drink cart and people hit the ceiling, and the oxygen masks dropped down. Seemed like everyone was screaming and praying to God. It felt like a roller coaster, but you don't know it's gonna end safely. Passengers got tossed into different rows than they were initially seated in. When we landed, the pilot said it was the worst he ever experienced in his career. They had ambulances and fire trucks waiting for us. Took me about a decade to feel okay with flying again. I was in a similar experience, except I've always been afraid of flying. My job at the time required me to travel a lot. Once flight from Savannah home, we're flying over New Orleans and the pilot says we're going to fly around, or above, the storm to avoid it. The stewards were serving drinks. Everything's fine. Then all of a sudden, there's light turbulence and the pilot turns on the fasten seatbelt light and the flight attendants are yelling at people to take their seats. I'm in the row right behind first class. The turbulence gets bad and the lights go out and people are screaming. I'm freaking out, but the couple across the aisle from me is crying, screaming. Then the plane seems to fall out of the sky and nosedive. We're falling so steep that the panel wall in front of me that blocks first class is almost directly below me, like I'm pushing my feet against it and trying to keep my dinner down. We fell for maybe 3 seconds, but it felt so ugly, and then we hit really heavy turbulence. Drinks are flying. I look at the stewardess in their seat and they're sitting there looking calm, but they're gripping the armrest just as tight as I was. It lasts maybe 10 minutes total of dipping, turbulence, etc. up/down. When we finally level out, I'm shaking and ready to throw up. I don't know if it's going to happen again because every bump now has my heart racing. I turn on my phone and start texting everyone I love because I thought for sure something's wrong. When we landed home, everyone was texting since I'm afraid of flying. Maybe it wasn't as bad as I imagined. The pilots are the first off the plane. I've never seen that happen. They go out to meet someone at the gate and I hear them say it was really bad out there. We were the last flight of the night and I'm like, even the pilots thought it was bad. I grab my bag and go to wait for my mom to pick me up and I just start bawling as soon as I see her. I don't think I'll ever get over my fear of flying, but that experience just made it 10x worse. I hope I can get over it soon. So similar. That made me relive certain parts of it. I know it's hard to just change your perceptions based on another stranger's words, but the core realization that helped me fly again is just seeing statistically how few planes crash due to turbulence. If you go down from turbulence, it's basically a freak accident like getting hit by a falling piano or getting hit by stray celebratory gunfire. Another thing that helped me is watching videos of plane wing tests. Those wings can basically flap like birds. It's pretty cool to see. I had something similar happen. We had turbulence for about 10 minutes and my girlfriend was just holding my hand because she was scared. I was holding a drink in the other hand and telling her I'd been through worse. Suddenly the plane just started free falling and my drink hit the ceiling. My girlfriend then had a death grip on my hand and arm, which she didn't release till we landed an hour later. It was insane. I was calm and looking out the window when the free fall stopped and the wings bent up like a taco. Anything unsecured wound up scattered across the plane. When we landed, I asked the stewardess how far we fell and if they ever experienced anything like that. We dropped over 500 feet and she said that was the scariest flight she'd been on in her 5 years working. So I had bad turbulence once flying back to California from New York. It was an evening flight and everyone was getting drinks. All of a sudden the seatbelt light comes on and the cabin crew start running to the back as the plane starts to shake hard. One of them yelps and they get themselves secure. The plane shook for what felt like an hour. I'm flying alone and terrified, but I'm seated next to an old couple. Me, I have a death grip on my seat. Them, they're passed out, slept through the whole thing. The wife even said it was such a good flight. Those planes are built pretty damn strong. 2 years aviation maintenance in college. We got to watch some damn impressive videos of structural and engine testing. Watching them throw a good 20 pounds frozen turkey into a multi-million-dollar full-throttle jet engine is pretty cool, as well as simulating flying through a hurricane by blasting a few thousand gallons of water through the engine to make sure it will still stay burning. Most of that water turns to steam. The wings on a 747 are so strong you can bend the tips to about 72 degrees before the stress is high enough to basically shatter it by ripping the rivets apart. Those are designed to stay in the air so well that many planes can glide to a landing if they lose power, some better than others. I once flew through turbulence so bad I was literally lifted out of my seat for a moment. I swore pretty loudly but didn't get in any trouble because I think we were all pretty shook up by that on the crowded plane. After many flights, I have decided I am never stepping foot on a plane ever again. I think the last straw was when that plane took off in Colorado and pieces of it fell off into people's yards. Yep, that was the deal breaker for me. Never liked flying anyway. Something like this happened when we were landing in DFW. The attendants didn't scream, but one of the guys a few seats back did. To me it was just more fun to the flight. The thing was, when we were getting off I looked behind me and the guy who screamed realized I was on the plane and asked me if I got scared during the turbulence. I told him no and that it was fun to me. His face fell as he realized I wasn't bothered and that he couldn't save face as we were both going to basic training. I knew he was going in the Air Force while he knew I was going Army. Still makes me giggle when I think of him, as he had a fear of flying. No clue what happened to him afterwards. I was on a nighttime flight 15 years ago. All of a sudden, the cabin lights are turned on to full blast and the captain makes an announcement. You may be smelling a noxious odor. We have an electrical fire on board, and can't be sure how quickly it might spread. We are being diverted to the nearest airport and will be executing an emergency landing in 15 minutes. Please give your attention to your flight attendants as they instruct you in proper crash landing procedure. I would have thought there would be hysteria, but everyone became deathly quiet. I had my 11-month-old with me and was advised to hold him in my arms and assume the crash landing procedure as best as possible to shield his body with mine. Everyone on that plane thought we were dead. I was talking quietly to my baby, pointing out the window at the earth below and telling him how beautiful it all was. I didn't want him to die scared. After about 10 minutes and no catastrophic failure, we all began to relax a bit, thinking that the fire was contained or spreading extremely slowly. We all positioned ourselves for a crash landing. The tarmac was ablaze with the flashing lights of fire trucks, ambulances, and police vehicles, all in preparation for a worst-case scenario. We landed smoothly and without incident. Thank God. That was a really bad 15 minutes. Not my story, but one from my father. He was flying in Russia and there was a terrible storm during the flight, and obviously it caused extreme turbulence. Then the captain turned on the PA system and told everyone, "This is Captain Bezmirtny speaking. We are passing through some light turbulence, so please fasten your seatbelts," in the most monotonous voice possible. Just to note, the name Bezmirtny translates in Russian to undying. Also, a lightning strike hit the wing, which was pretty scary. I flew on an Italian airline one time, and whenever there was turbulence, the pilot would come on and say something lengthy and presumably reassuring in Italian and then something cryptic in French, and then follow it up with an extremely truncated statement in English. There'd be a whole paragraph in Italian, several sentences in French, and then it'd be plane shake for a while. Fasten belt now. My dad had a flight from Moscow to around the edge of where Kazakhstan is now. This was right after the fall of communism. He sat down and his foot moved some of the carpet and a board that was underneath, and he could see the runway. Not like if you move your head a certain way or squint your eyes just right. but full on flint, stones, brakes type hole. He put on his seatbelt and the person next to him went to put theirs on, but it was 2 latches, no buckle. The pilot just made a pantomime to tie it, and that's what he did. Obligatory chickens and goat in the back as well. I bring those satchels of coffee on flights with me now. If someone is wearing perfume near me, I open up the coffee satchel and keep it near my nose. It can sometimes prevent the migraine.